Question 22 and 23 from the SAT number 9. This is the QAS test from April 2017. So we're doing question 22 and 23 together. These are paired questions, and what we know about paired questions is what we want to do is we want to start with this part here, question 22. We want to read what this question is asking. Then we want to jump down to these answer choices here for 23, A, B, C, and D. What we're going to do is we're going to look for an answer choice in advance that could answer this question here. So 22 says, in McKinnon's view, Ceres differs from other objects in the asteroid belt in which significant way? So there's a couple things to note here. One is that we're looking for something from McKinnon's view. And this actually ends up being pretty important for this question. And honestly, in general, for questions as you go forward and answer, you always want to make sure you pay attention to the details in the question, particularly if they're asking for something from a certain person's perspective or a certain person's viewpoint. You want to make sure that you check that out. So then we're looking for, in McKinnon's view, we're looking for how does Ceres differ, right, from other objects in the asteroid belt. Good. So that's it. We're looking for basically something about Ceres, why it's different from other asteroid belts. We want to make sure it's from McKinnon's view. This is the first question out of the gate. This is question 22. So that means that we're probably going to expect our text to be earlier, which would mean, honestly, all of these are pretty early, so we're not able to really eliminate any or even to make it like a strong judgment against any of them off the bat. But I would put my money towards A and B, right, because they're a little bit closer ahead. But it could be C, it could be D, because they all come before line 34 here. So let's check this out. So lines 2 to 5 say here, the dwarf planet Ceres and other icy chunks may have been born in the same realm as Pluto, but traveled all the way to the asteroid belt between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. So the dwarf planet Ceres and other icy chunks may have been born in the same realm as Pluto, but they traveled all the way to the asteroid belt between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. So what this sentence tells us is it does imply that there's something different about Ceres, right? It's different from the other objects in the asteroid belt because it's actually like a planet like Pluto, right? So it didn't originate in the asteroid belt, it migrated there, right? So just like Pluto. So that's a reason why Ceres might be different from other objects in the asteroid belt. However, what we're missing is this part here about McKinnon's view. What we should note is that McKinnon is mentioned down here, right? So this paragraph here is the first mention that we get of McKinnon, so nothing up here. This is sort of the perspective of the author or a fact that's being introduced, not from the view of McKinnon. So for that reason, we can eliminate A. B says 8 through 9. At 950 kilometers in distance, Ceres is by far their largest object in the asteroid belt. So this is great. One, we're getting a difference, it's about Ceres. Two, we're getting a difference between Ceres and objects in the asteroid belt because we're told it's the largest object in the asteroid belt. And three, this is a perspective from McKinnon. Even though the mention of McKinnon comes right after this sentence, it's sort of referenced, right? Because look at how this sentence begins. That's not the only reason it doesn't quite fit in with many of its companions, according to William McKinnon. So obviously, William McKinnon also believes that Ceres is the largest object in the asteroid belt. It's one of his views, but he also believes that there's some other things. So this could fit the parameters of the question. It's about Ceres, it's about why it's different from the asteroid belt, and it's from his perspective. So we should keep answer choice B. C says 18 through 20. That's down here. What's more, a dip in Ceres' light spectrum may be a sign of ammonium-rich clay at the surface. Right here, this sentence here doesn't tell us exactly that Ceres is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. All it says is that there's a sign of ammonium-rich clay at the surface. Now, ammonium-rich clay may be something that's different from other objects in the asteroid belt, which it turns out it actually is. But what you should train yourself to do is when you encounter a sentence like this, where it's not directly stating, for example, like this sentence is, that Ceres is different from objects in the asteroid belt, we want to make sure to sort of check our references. We want to expand our scope a little bit. Now, I do teach students to concentrate on specific sentences when they're doing these questions because the information has to be in these sentences. So you do want to constrain your attention. However, when something is being referenced, for example here, what's more, right, this is referencing something that comes outside of the text that we have. So it's almost like it gives us permission to look around at what's happening. So this whole paragraph here is McKinnon pointing out the different reasons, right? The different reasons why it doesn't fit in, why Ceres doesn't fit in with its companions, why Ceres is different from the asteroids. And he goes through a number of things, right? 25 to 30% ice, etc., etc. And then what's more, a dip in Ceres light spectrum may be a sign of ammonium-rich clay at the surface. And we may say, so what? This goes on to say this material has never been found in the fragments of asteroids that have fallen to Earth, but fits the expected ammonia-rich composition of a TNO. So this sentence could work as well, because it's telling us that there is ammonium-rich clay at the surface of Ceres, which is different from the objects in the asteroid, and this is also a perspective of McKinnon. So for that reason, C is going to be a good answer choice as well. Then we have lines 20 through 23. This is for answer choice D. So this is actually the sentence that we just read. This material has never been found in the fragments of asteroids that have fallen to Earth, but fits the expected ammonia-rich composition of a TNO. So this is kind of difficult because we need to, this is hard because this sentence here is explaining to us why ammonium-rich clay on the surface of Ceres makes it unique and makes it different. So deciding between C and D in advance might be hard. But if we think a little more critically, the question we need to ask ourselves is, which one is more directly about Ceres? And that would be the answer choice C, which talks about the dip in light spectrum having means it has ammonium-rich clay at the surface. Whereas the next text really is about ammonium-rich clay itself, right? It's explaining to us, it's proving to us why the fact that Ceres has this clay makes it unique, but it's specifically focusing on that material and not connecting it to why Ceres is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. So I hope that distinction makes sense. Even given that, we could probably still get to the right answer if we can't figure that out, eliminate that in advance. But that's going to be the first thing that we're going to, that's one of the ways to think about this. And I think that's the best way, the most efficient way is to be able to eliminate D off the bat. So now we have B and C as our two possible answer choices. And what I'd like to do is go back one more time just to sort of double check for myself to understand what it is that they're saying. So B says that Ceres is by far the largest object in the asteroid belt, right? So that's one possibility. The second says that it has ammonium-rich clay on its surface. So the surface material is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. So any of the answer choices from 22 that answer that could work. A says the surface temperature of Ceres is lower than the temperature of the other objects. So no answer choices in 23 are about A, the surface temperature. So we can get rid of A. B says the dimensions of Ceres have varied more over time than the dimensions of other objects have. Now here we're talking about the dimensions, which may seem to be referring to the size of Ceres. However, what B is talking about is varying more over time. This is talking about change in time, whereas what B is saying here is basically that it's just large to begin with, not that it's changing in size, going bigger and bigger or smaller and smaller or back and forth. So for that reason, we should be able to eliminate B, and that means we want to make sure we're paying attention to all the details in the sentence here. So C says the surface composition of Ceres is dissimilar to the composition of the other objects. So the surface composition of Ceres is dissimilar to the composition of the other objects. This would match answer choice C, which says that Ceres has ammonium-rich clay at its surface, whereas other objects in the asteroid belt don't. The other thing that C has in favor is it has that correct answer choice quality that we want for the SAT, where it's very general, it's very neutral. It's almost bleached of specificity, it's bleached of being concrete. Here it's saying the surface composition of Ceres, right? Instead of talking about surface material or being concrete about ammonia-rich clay or clay, it's talking about surface composition. Then it says it's dissimilar, which is different, right? And then it says to the composition of the other objects. When we know the question is asking about comparing Ceres to objects in the asteroid belt, right, or other asteroids, but this is talking about the composition of the other objects. So it has a little bit of that almost like unique aspect that correct answer choices on the SAT have. A little more general, a little more vague, a little more vanilla, a little less saturated with actual like concrete detail. So C is a good answer choice there. Then D says the light reflected by Ceres is more intense than the light reflected by the other objects. This may confuse us a little bit, and we may be like, wait, because we may remember that they're talking about light reflection having to do with the ammonia-rich clay. So we may think, okay, maybe we're missing something here. But what D is saying is that the light reflected by Ceres is more intense. And the only thing that's told about the light reflection of Ceres is that there's a dip in the light spectrum. A dip in the light spectrum. So that's not saying that Ceres the light is more intense. So for that reason, we can get rid of D. And that's going to leave us with answer choice C for our correct answer for 22, and answer choice C as well for our correct answer for question 23.